I can still hear the soft, almost inaudible whispering that plagued me every night, like a chorus of the damned. It began after I moved into my new home, an old, decrepit house on the outskirts of town. Its dilapidated exterior and overgrown yard appealed to my love for the mysterious and the uncharted. But the darkness that dwelled within those walls I could never have fathomed. It all began innocently enough, with faint rustling sounds and the occasional creaking of the ancient floorboards. I dismissed it as the natural sounds of an old house settling. That was my first mistake. As the days passed, the disturbances grew more sinister. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, convinced that someone was watching me. But there was never anyone there, just the oppressive silence of my empty house. One evening, I decided to invite a friend over, hoping that their presence would chase away the mounting dread that had settled in my chest. Sarah, a brave soul with an affinity for the paranormal, eagerly accepted my invitation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the room, Sarah and I sat huddled together in my dimly lit living room. The atmosphere was heavy, like a thick fog that clung to our senses. We lit a few candles, their wavering flames casting flickering patterns on the walls. Sarah began to speak, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "You know," she whispered, "I've heard stories about this place. People say it's haunted, that strange things happen here." I nodded, trying to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. "I've heard whispers at night," I admitted, my voice barely louder than a breath. We decided to conduct a makeshift séance, a foolish attempt to communicate with whatever entity might be lurking in the shadows. We clasped hands and closed our eyes, focusing our energy on the unknown. In that moment, the room grew colder and the candles flickered violently. A shiver ran down my spine as a voice, icy and malevolent, whispered, "Get out." My eyes shot open, and I stared at Sarah, her face contorted in fear. But before we could react, the room erupted into chaos. Objects flew off shelves, the walls seemed to close in on us, and the very air became dense with malevolence. We screamed and bolted for the front door. Outside, gasping for breath and hearts pounding, we looked back at the house. Its windows glowed with an otherworldly light, and the whispered voices grew louder. A cacophony of torment and despair. We never returned to that house, but the horror had already seeped into my soul. The whispers followed me, taunting me day and night. Sleep became an elusive dream, and my sanity began to unravel. Desperate for answers, I turned to a local historian, Mr. Hendricks, who had a fascination with the house's history. He invited me to his cluttered, dusty office, where books and documents covered every surface. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat before speaking in a hushed tone. "That house has a dark past," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. In the late 1800s, it was the residence of the Blackwood family. They were known for their strange rituals and obsession with the occult. I leaned in, my curiosity piqued. "Go on," I urged. "The Blackwoods believed that they could commune with the dead," Mr. Hendricks continued. "They conducted séances and experiments in that very house, trying to unlock the secrets of the afterlife. But their obsession came at a terrible cost." He paused, as if debating whether to reveal the darkest part of the story. Finally, he spoke in a hushed voice. "It is said that the eldest Blackwood son, Samuel, made a pact with a malevolent entity. In exchange for power and knowledge, Samuel offered his own soul." My blood ran cold as I listened. "What happened to him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Samuel's descent into madness was swift," Mr. Hendricks continued. "He began to murder animals, then people. The townsfolk eventually discovered his gruesome deeds and burned down the Blackwood House with him inside. But it's said that Samuel's spirit still lingers, forever bound to the place of his torment. As I left Mr. Hendrick's office, his words echoed in my mind, filling me with dread. I knew I had to confront the evil that dwelled within the house. I couldn't let it consume me any longer. Returning to the cursed dwelling felt like a descent into madness, but I was determined to uncover the truth. Armed with sage, holy water, and a heart pounding with fear, I entered the house one last time. The atmosphere was thick with malevolence, and the whispers grew into a cacophony of despair. But I pressed on, determined to confront whatever haunted this place. In the center of the living room, I lit the sage and let the fragrant smoke fill the air. The room trembled, and a voice cold and mocking spoke from the shadows. "You cannot banish me." I clutched the vial of holy water and began to sprinkle it around the room. The walls shrieked, and the temperature plummeted. I could feel the presence growing stronger, more oppressive. As I recited prayers, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Samuel Blackwood, his eyes hollow and filled with madness. He advanced toward me, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. "You think you can banish me?" Samuel hissed, his voice a tortured, echoing wail. I fought back terror and held up a crucifix. "In the name of God, I command you to leave this place," I shouted. Samuel let out an agonized scream, and the room seemed to collapse in on itself. The walls crumbled, and the ceiling rained down debris. I closed my eyes and prayed with all my might. When I opened them again, I was standing outside the house, which now lay in ruins. The whispers were gone, and the malevolent presence had dissipated. The curse had been broken. I never returned to the remnants of that house, and the nightmares gradually faded away. But I could never forget the terror I had faced, the evil that had taken root within those walls. To this day, I can't help but wonder if Samuel Blackwood's malevolent spirit had truly been vanquished, or if it still lurked in the shadows, waiting for another soul to torment. The darkness that had once dwelled within that house now dwelled within me, a chilling reminder that evil can lurk where we least expect it, even within ourselves.